Hi, my wonderful Math 50 students. Last class, towards the end of class, we started talking about dividing polynomials. The only problem was we kind of rushed through it, and I need you guys to make sure you understand how to do it. Because next class, we're going to move on from this. We're going to go to factoring, so I'm not going to have any more time in class to spend on dividing polynomials. But I have to make sure you guys get it. So please read the book, do lots of problems. But since we rushed through it, I decided to do a couple more problems and post it on the website, so that might help a little bit. So let's get right into it. When it comes to dividing polynomials, the section on dividing polynomials, there were two different kind of problems. One of the types of problems was how do you divide a polynomial by a monomial, and the other one was how do you divide a polynomial by another polynomial. Okay, so I want to do two examples of dividing a polynomial by a monomial, and then two more dividing a polynomial by another polynomial. And hopefully that'll make things a little bit more clear. So let's go ahead and look at this first example here. Okay, so example one. I want you to look at the problem before we do it. It says dividing a polynomial by a monomial up on top, but let's make sure you understand that that's the situation when you look at the problem. So if you look at this problem, you see this long fraction line, it's like a divide sign. Above it, you see a polynomial. So we have one long polynomial here. But look at the bottom. The bottom is just one term. In other words, there's no additions or subtractions. It's one long mess of stuff all being multiplied together. So this is a polynomial divided by a monomial. When you're dividing by a monomial, you do the problem one way. When you divide by a polynomial, you do it other ways. So we'll do that one later. So this is a problem about dividing a polynomial by a monomial. When you divide a polynomial by a monomial, what you do is you're going to take the monomial on the bottom and put it underneath each term up on top. Now there's three terms on top. 1, 2, 3. You can tell because you see the minus and plus sign separating the three terms. So what's going to end up happening is you're going to end up having three fractions. Okay, so you're going to put this under that. That's going to give you a fraction. Then you're going to put this also under that. That's going to give you a second fraction. And you put that under that, that'll give you a third fraction. So let's start with that. So okay, so first fraction line, again, I'm going to do this divided by that. So 24, x to the third, y to the 7, z to the fourth, over the monomial on the bottom, 20, x to the fifth, y to the 7, z squared. Okay, then the symbols that you see up here, the minus and the plus, that's what goes in between your fractions. So now I'm going to put the minus sign. This minus sign I'm putting here. Then I'm going to put this monomial underneath this second one here. So another fraction line. Put this monomial on top, this monomial on the bottom. So we have 18, x to the 6, y to the third, z, over 20, x to the fifth, y to the 7, z squared. Okay, then I'm going to put, what symbol am I going to put here? This symbol up here, this plus sign. So I'll put the plus here, then one more fraction line. Now we'll put this monomial underneath that term. So we'll have 30 x to the 9, y squared z to the 12 up here, and then we'll put this monomial 20 x to the 5th, y to the 7, z squared down here. Okay, so you put this monomial underneath each term. Since there's three terms on top, it creates three separate fractions. This monomial, notice, is the same monomial on the bottom of each one. And then the symbols in between are the symbols that are in between up there. So this minus goes in between those two fractions, this plus goes in between those two fractions. And once you've done that, now you're just dividing monomials. So I have to divide monomials here, I have to divide monomials here, I have to divide monomials here. So you turn a problem of dividing a polynomial by a monomial into three separate problems where you're dividing monomials by monomials. How do you divide monomials by monomials? The answer is you do things separately. So like when we are going to do this term, you're going to start off by dividing the numbers. Then you divide the x's, then you divide the y's, then you divide the z's. So we're going to divide the numbers. Then we'll divide the x's. Then we'll divide the y's. And then we'll divide the z's. So you divide separately. Okay, when you divide the numbers, I don't actually want you to divide the numbers. I don't want you to do 24 divided by 20. I want you to treat that as a fraction. Think of it as the fraction 24 over 20. And I want you to simplify it. Now the way you simplify a fraction is you look for a number that goes into the top and bottom evenly. I know 2 goes into top and bottom, 4 goes into top and bottom. Which one should I use? The biggest number you can think of that goes into the top and bottom will be the best thing to use, because then that way you can simplify it in one step. I think 4 is the biggest thing that goes into both. So I'm going to divide that top number by 4, I'm going to divide the bottom number by 4. Okay, so when you do that, let's see what you get. So you divide 24 by 4, you get 6. 20 divided by 4 is 5. Okay. And I know it's simplified because if this fraction could have been simplified further, then I know I could have divided by a bigger number. So that the 4 is the biggest thing. Okay, now we divide the x's. When you're dividing the x's, look, we're dividing things with the same base. When you divide things with the same base, there's three things I need you to remember. Number one, you're going to subtract the powers. Number 2, you're going to write your answer on top. And number 3, when you subtract the powers, you put the top power minus the bottom power. These both have the same base, so the base of the answer is going to be x. Where am I going to write it? On top. Then you subtract the powers, 3 minus 5. Make sure you do the top power minus the bottom power, so 3 minus 5. Okay, let's try that again. So now we're dividing the y's. Again, these things have the same base. When you divide terms that have the same base, the base is going to be the same. So the base is going to be y. But where am I going to write the y? Write it on top. Always write your answer on top. Then you subtract the powers. You do 7 minus 7. So 7 minus 7. Okay, and then we'll do the same thing for the z's. When you divide the z's, again, write your answer on top. So we'll put the z on top. Then you subtract the powers. Make sure you do the top power minus the bottom power. So 4 minus 2. Okay, there's more simplifying to do there, but we'll come back to it in a minute. Let's go to the next fraction. Same thing here. We're dividing monomials, so you divide things separately. So you can divide the numbers in the front. So we'll divide these numbers. Then you divide the x's. Then you divide the y's. Then you divide the z's. Okay, so when you divide the numbers, again, think of it as a fraction. You're looking for something that goes into both evenly. I think 2 goes into both, and I think that's the biggest number that goes into both. So we'll divide top and bottom by 2. Okay, when you divide the top by 2, you get 9. You divide the bottom by 2, you get 10. Okay. Now I'll divide the x's. Again, when you divide things with the same base, the answer will have the same base. So I'm going to write an x somewhere. Where am I going to write it? On top. Always write your answer on top. Then you subtract the powers. You'll do the top power minus the bottom power. 6 minus 5. 6. Sorry, that didn't come out well. Okay, 6 minus 5. Okay. Then we divide the y's. Same thing. Write your answer on top. And you're going to do 3 minus 7. 3 minus 7. Divide the z's. Write your answer on top. Now, when there's no power, what's the power? The power is a 1. So make sure you include that. So you can do top power minus bottom power. It's going to be 1 minus 2. Okay, next term. Same thing again. We're dividing monomials, so you do them separately. Divide the numbers, then divide the x's, then divide the y's, then divide the z's. Okay, we divide the numbers. You're looking for the biggest number that goes into both. I know 2 goes into both, 5 goes into both, even 10 goes into both, and I think 10 is the biggest thing that goes into both, so we're going to divide top and bottom by 10. We divide the top and bottom by 10. You divide the 30 by 10, you get 3. Divide the 20 by 10, you get 2. Okay. And once again, you divide the letters separately. When you divide the x's, since they both have the same base, the answer will have the same base. So you write an x. Where are you going to write it? On top. Then you subtract the powers. Top power minus bottom power. Okay. Next term. When you divide the y's, again, write your answer on top. Subtract the powers. Top power minus bottom power. Then when you divide the z's, write the answer on top. And then again, top power minus bottom power. Okay. So now let me go ahead and simplify this a little bit further. Let's subtract these powers and see what you get. So when you do 3 minus 5, you get negative 2. So that's x to negative 2. Subtract the 7, so you get power 0 there. When you subtract the 4 minus 2, you get 2. Okay. This next term, when you subtract the 6 and the 5, you get x to the 1. 3 minus 7 is negative 4. And then 1 minus 2 is negative 1. Okay, and then subtract the 9 and the 5, you get 4. 2 minus 7 is negative 5. And this is e to the 10. Okay, we're getting there. The only thing left to do now is you can't have a negative power in your answer. You don't want to have a 0 power in your answer. You don't want to have a 1 power in your answer. So if you have a negative power, first of all, you need to move it. So any term that has a negative power, this one has a negative power, this has a negative power, negative power, negative power. Anytime you see a negative power, you're going to move it. Okay, if you see power 0, what I told you before in class is that anything to the power 0 is 1, so that turns into a 1. But I'm not even going to write the 1 because it's going to be 1 times this other stuff. When you do 1 times other stuff, you get the other stuff. So long story short, when you see a power 0 term, that term is just going to disappear completely. And when you see a power 1, like over here, x to the power 1, just understand that power 1 is, it's not necessary to write the 1. So in the next line, I'm not going to write this 1. I'm just going to write x. Okay, so let's see what's going to move. So this is the negative power. This negative term with the negative power is going to move to the bottom. This term has a negative power. That's going to move to the bottom. This is a negative power. You're going to move it to the bottom. And this one. Everything that has a positive power, you can just leave it where it is. But if it has a negative power, you move it. All right, now, so for the final answer, let's see what we have here. So the 6 stays on top. This goes to the bottom. I'll write in a minute. That disappears, so you just have z squared left on top. On the bottom you have 5x squared. Okay, y to the 0, don't have to write that one down. Okay, then minus over here, oops, the 9 and the 10. Now again, x to the 1, I'm not going to write the 1, so I'm just going to write an x. And then these terms are both going to move to the bottom. When you move something to the bottom, the power becomes positive. This is y to the negative 4. When I write it on the bottom, it's going to be y to the positive 4. When I write the z term on the bottom, that's z to the negative 1. When you move it to the bottom, it's z to the positive 1. And again, when just you have a positive 1 power, you don't need to write it, so I'm just going to write z there. Okay, plus. Now this last term, so we have 3, x to the 4th, z to the 10. Those all stay on top. On the bottom, we have the 2, and then when you move that to the bottom, again, that has a negative power. You're going to make it positive, so it's going to be y to the positive 5. And that is the answer to that one. Okay, let's look at another example.